every year for the last 14 years, we've had teenagers from Wyoming. Some of them are really good kids, some of them are pretty good kids, and some of them are not too good kids. We've had parole officers' permission to bring some of them down here. We're trying to turn them around. We have a problem in this country with our youth, and that's where our future is. And yet, archaeologists particularly, everybody loves archaeology. Archaeologists are not doing nearly enough with their outreach programs to help us turn around the kids that are drive-by shooting, graffiti on the wall, teenage pregnancies. I could go on and on and on. They're on the headlines in every newspaper, but nobody's doing anything about it. And about 3 years ago, I was sitting in a room that was almost excavated. We were down about 4 feet. The walls were beautiful, and we'd screened all the dirt, and we were taking it out. You uncover the dirt with a trowel, looking for what might ever be there. And then when you get a pile of dirt, you put it in a bucket. You go up the ladder. You give it to a couple more kids, and they screen it, looking for things that we'd lost. Well, I was sitting there, this little 13-year-old girl, cute little girl from Chugwater, Wyoming, or Wheatland, or one of those towns. And I was sitting in the shade with my hat on, drinking Coca-Cola, and she was out in the sun because that's where she had to dig. And we were talking about things, and she moved her trowel a little bit, and she turned over the most beautiful little mountain lion fetish, about that big, with turquoise eyes. And she looked at me, and she looked at it, and I looked at her, and I looked at it, and she was scared to death. I said, pick it up. And she just sat there, she wasn't ready for that. This was an extraordinary event in her life and my life and the life of everybody else out there. But she picked it up, and one of the eyes fell out. The turquoise eyes fell out. So I put it in a little Ziploc bag, and I removed the other eye because it had been glued in with pinon pitch as mastic. And I separated those eyes, but I marked them which eye goes in on which side, and when I got home, I glued those things back in just like they were. But the point was, history was coming alive, and that same little girl, we were screening. We were under shelter because it was a hot day, and the guys come up and they dump half a bucket of dirt in the screen, and we shake it, and then we very carefully go through picking out 50 little pieces of pottery and some lithics and different things, pieces of bones, bones of little dead animals, mice and squirrels and things that punctuate that entire pueblo. And I was telling this little girl about the Spanish. They came in this country in 1540, and Coronado didn't have wagons, so because there were no roads, so all the things they brought in, they had to bring on their back, and horseshoes were heavy, so they didn't bring horseshoes, but they bought nails. And when the nails wore down, they took the horseshoe off, put the same shoe back on with new nails, and they had a system that worked well. And I could see her, this guy's telling me this thing. And we're shaking a screen, and she picked up a religious medallion. Said Roma on it. It was cast. And I explained to her. She looked at me and she said, Mr. Fenn, the Spanish really were here, weren't they? She wouldn't believe a word I said until she picked up that medallion. I explained to her that it had a date on it, but the date didn't mean the date that it was made. It meant the date of some important event. But the fact that it said Roma on it means that it was made in Italy. It had to be taken personally in front of the Pope and blessed, along with another 10,000, or they couldn't put the word Roma on it. And then somehow it got into the hands of the Spanish, either sold or traded or something. The Spanish brought it to Puerto Vallarta, up the Camino Real to San Lazaro Pueblo, and all of a sudden history comes alive for this little girl. And she said, Mr. Fenn, the Spanish really were here, weren't they? I had been talking to her for an hour about that, and she didn't believe a word I said. But she believed me after that. I mean, I sound like I'm a genius. I don't have the slightest idea what I'm talking about, but you learn things, you know. Every time you do something, when you touch a hot stove, you learn something about that. And sometimes you remember it, hopefully. History is something that I've been a part of and studied, and I can read, and I remember a lot about history because it's something that doesn't just pass through my mind. It grabs a hold on the way through, and I can remember those things.